Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. You're watching P3, the place where we feature individuals who have tapped into their power, passion, and purpose. I'm your host, Janie Terrazas, and today I have the lovely and the wonderful Madi Shofner. She is a transformational life coach. She's also very much into mindfulness, and she is here to help people create a fulfilled life. And I'm so thrilled that you were able to be with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you too. It's my honor.
I met Madi because she does a meetup here in San Antonio, like a mindfulness meetup. And so I met her there, and I just thought that she was really fantastic, and I love what she was doing. And we felt like we were kindred spirits. You had a dragonfly. You had a dragonfly on your business card. I'm like, hello, you're a dragonfly like me. So tell us a little bit about just power, passion, purpose. Like, I know that you are really living from that special trinity, and I know that was a process.
So you mentioned it like a trinity. So I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. It's quite big of a question. Maybe we can tackle them each as one at a time.
Yeah.
So we'll start in order. So power. How did I come into my power, and what does power mean to me? Those are the questions that come to mind. Let's start with what it means. For me, power has changed its meaning, and it means to me that I own my own space, that my energy is no longer trying to fix other people, make sure everyone else's things are getting done, that I'm checking the parent portal, or that I'm making sure that all the follow-up emails actually happen. It's more like allowing the external circumstances to take their own responsibilities, meaning other people, and giving them their power back by getting out of their business, which at the time I didn't think I was in their business. I thought I was helping. And I like to say it in that framework so it changes our perspective. And then our power comes back to our energy, comes back to ourselves. And when we're owning our own responsibility and we create these healthier boundaries in loving kindness and the way we clearly communicate expectations, understandings, what love means to us, we literally feel more energy. We also come into our own voice. So now we're able to freely communicate what's important to us and do it in a way that's compassionate and with no blame. So we're in a place of non-judgment. And this is where our power resides. And our power is in our center, it's in our gut. We can feel it with our emotions and sometimes with our digestion. I like to use my intuition by asking my body, how does this feel for me right now? Is having this conversation really necessary, or do I want to be more patient and see how it shakes out? For me, that's my power.
I know that feels so good. It's liberation, it's liberating to be able to finally have healed self enough where that becomes your new default system, your new operating system. And even then, we always have those moments. But there are a lot of practices that you put into place so that the soul self, the higher self, can be stronger than sort of the small I, the ego that people, like to talk about. And so we don't want to shame the ego. It's there for a reason. And it has all its protective mechanisms based on the life you lived.
It meant well.
It meant well.
It meant well. Now with the power of our mind. So I would like to even add here that our ultimate power comes from how we use our mind as a tool. All of our feeling comes from how we're thinking. And our thinking and feeling impacts our actions, and our actions create our results. So if we want to create the life we love and have those results, we want to see, well, where are my thoughts in these places? And how can I anchor them in what's important rather than be reacting to what's happening? Those reactions, like you said, those default systems have been there to protect us, but from what? From what we truly value. And we truly want to have happiness. We truly want to be connected with what's important. So, as a coach, I help people define what that is. Because if you don't know what brings happiness, how are you going to know it's there when it's there? Or if we can't cultivate it and grow it, then how can we make more of it without being in the same auto feed loops that create the same reality? So yes, power is really paying attention to our mind and learning how to use it as a tool that serves us. And one of my mottos is always telling myself, I say, I am the mind. So that helps me when my body doesn't want to cooperate, like the body wants to sleep in, or the body doesn't want to do the yoga, or the body doesn't want to make that call. Instead, you say, I am the body. I'm not going to let the body be an autopilot. And I choose in this direction, the direction of value.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful.
It is. And that's just another example of the voice part that you brought up. It's like understanding that there's an inner dialogue, and the self-talk that we're having is coming from a particular place. And for us to get compassionately curious about what we're thinking and why we're thinking those things, and having somebody like yourself guide one to help them connect those dots and go a little bit deeper, and then give them the tools that they need. But that voice, the inner voice, being able to use our voice, you mentioned creating healthy boundaries. And that's so huge. People are going to hear more and more about healthy boundaries, healthy boundaries.
It can get kind of a pop word that makes no sense.
Exactly. So would you be able, because it really does tie in so much to how we're able to take energy back, because like you said, our power is our energy. So any type of mental, emotional anguish, it comes a lot from us not really speaking up and saying how we feel and doing it in a way that's effective. And it's all part of this self-care and self-love. So touch a little bit on that if you don't mind.
Sure. And this would tie with purpose. So by kind of going into how do we live in our purpose, it's owning this sense of what boundary means to us so that we can actually guide into that part of us that fulfills us. So a healthy boundary would be somewhere, a lot of times what happens is people tend to, for those of us without healthy boundaries, we're people pleasers or controllers. So maybe not very pleasing, but controlling, or both, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we might think we're being a people pleaser and we're being controlling. So there's those things that could be going on. And what we want to recognize is that the only person we control in the world is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And to compassionately work with people in creating a dynamic of communication that serves us in our own power is to create a healthy boundary where the only thing you're controlling is yourself. So that would look like something that says, if you don't communicate with me about this by Friday, I won't be making plans with you for next week. So this gives a deadline on giving them the power to choose what they're going to do. And you have the power to say, if by Friday you don't contact me, we're off. And this allows us to be our own best friend, to have self-compassion, and to be able to honor our own feeling of wanting to have a sense of freedom, a sense of respect. We're owning freedom and respect by showing it in the healthy boundary. And notice that it was very precise. There isn't any way for it to be unclear. So that way the person knows that they have a choice. When we do these things, what may also happen is that they don't like it. They're not used to this. The way we have been treated is something that we've been teaching indirectly or directly. And the way we treat ourselves also teaches others how to treat us. So when we start to come into this realization of this power and how we want to own these boundaries, and we start changing our behavior and our form of communication, there will be that bravery to step into our power, to own the results that's going to occur with those new actions. For me, what happens, not only with myself but also with clients, is that bravery is anchored in something valuable to us. So we define our values. In this case, it could be a value with a relationship, whether it be a son, a friend, or a spouse, or a significant other. And it is now an opportunity to be clear and concise in our communication. And I love the words that you said earlier, curiosity with compassion. This is where we come from a place of emotional maturity in allowing our feelings without becoming them, and allowing others who do become their emotions to be compassionate that they are still learning to process the way they think, and for us to be the example in our learning of it. So I hope I concised that, because there's so much like a lot going on with boundaries, but you clearly see that a boundary has nothing to do with telling other people what to do.
Absolutely.
It's about defining what it is for ourselves in our own ownership of holding our own space, defined in our values, and using our mindfulness skills so that we can have the patience and the loving kindness in the non-judgment of that space.
Yes, it's really bringing the attributes of both sides of our brains, you know, the reason and the logic and the analyticalness, but allowing the emotion and the feeling to still have its space. That's
Right.
Communication is an art form, and it's an art. And for us to really value it and do what we can to learn as much as we can about it benefits us greatly. And I know that as a coach, that's something that you help people do. You help them put words to feelings, because some people struggle with communicating that, which goes back to that voice.
Right. And knowing that our feelings are guides. The feelings or triggers are about us. And so it's not so and so made me feel this, or that event makes me feel that. What we feel is about ourselves. And we can choose our emotions once we understand where those feelings are coming from, just like we can direct our thoughts. That doesn't mean we want to change an emotion and pretend it doesn't exist. There is a processing of emotions and the processing of where they came from, especially if we know where it did come from. But those triggers and those emotions are guides. And when we see them as something that tells us something about ourselves, what does this emotion tell me about what I need? What does this emotion tell me about how I've been letting people treat me without having healthy boundaries? What can I do about it? You know, knowing that our emotions are, what tends to happen is people want to avoid stuff, deny, ignore, buffer the emotion. Emotions are uncomfortable. And so we tend to unconsciously try to do these ways of not feeling because it's painful. And yet it's like a wound that is not tended to. And so if a wound that's not tended to is continued to be ignored, it festers and then it manifests into an infection. And so those infections, like for my past history, that became a 12-year journey of chronic fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, depression, migraines. I didn't realize those physical manifestations in my body were really my emotions that were never, ever paid attention to. And so as those years I was tending to the physical part of my body, I did not know that healing also meant the emotional and the mental. And so this is where you said too, you had said that we were both kind of resonating with the idea that we don't want to become the emotion, but we can feel it and understand it and use our mind as a tool in directing it with our values as a compass. So that's where we take care of the physical, the mental, and the emotional, and then we become whole. We are now in harmony with our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
I liked earlier you used the words, I believe, clear and concise. We have to get very clear and concise about what it is that we want to experience, what do we want to feel, what brings us joy. And a lot of getting clear and concise when it comes to those things is about what makes you feel safe, like what makes you feel unsafe and what makes you feel safe.
Yes, and adding here too, though, that a lot of people, and this is really important, and this includes myself and something I redirect myself with, it's not the outside of us where we're trying to create that safety or that joy. It's really within us. And the power is within us, not only to cultivate it from inside out, but also to create it in the world around us. So knowing that the creation in the world around us can be co-creation, either with our God or universe or energy, but also with people, but owning our power by not depending on others to be that for us. It comes from within first, and then we can share with others.
Yes. What are some of your self-care practices, and do they sort of tie into passion?
I'm glad you mentioned passion too. So we can now move to the next part of this P3. I love this. So yes, so passion, I do have routines that anchor me into my passions. And it at first, it wasn't something I did it with intention. They just happened.
Mm-hmm.
But now that they have intention, they're so deeply rooted. They are like absolute appointments with myself that are non-negotiable.
Ooh,
And I make
please say that again. That's like dynamite for those of you that remember the So Good times.
yes, they are appointments with myself that are non-negotiable. So my first one is in the morning, and that is a practice of meditating and writing. And I go into different rhythms. Sometimes I write first, sometimes I meditate after, and then other times I'll meditate first and then do writing reflections for meditation. For me, that's not the important part. The important part is that they're coupled, and I do this daily. Without it, my mind will feel frazzled by 11 a.m. till o'clock. I'll start to feel like time is flying. There's a sense of overwhelm. And I truly believe that meditation creates a heart-brain coherence that even though we don't believe currently, our medical system doesn't check our body's I guess we can say polarity as a form of our physical healing. I believe that the heart-brain coherence that occurs in meditation kind of resets our polarity. And that allows for our mind, that's our heart mind, and our brain, that's our brain mind, and our gut, that's our gut mind, to all be working together throughout the day.
Yes.
Some days I'll need a second meditation depending on how I'm feeling. I just listen to the body. But that's the first thing that I do, that I make it happen. And I wake up earlier for it. I literally go to bed now. At this point, I've been doing this for years now. I can't wait till morning so that I can have this moment with myself. And I also share it with a cup of coffee. Like, that's my companion during that process of writing. It's this wonderful place. Another thing that's part of my passion and my self-care and my self-love is that I love like shiny, blingy, like things, like, so I do my nails. I do my nails in the morning, and it works wonderful because it's this sense of mindfulness practice with calm, gentle brush strokes on my nails with concentration. I allow my mind to be still in thought and just be in that space. And then as my nails dry, I meditate. So it's this like really fun way to incorporate mindfulness in my life and have a deliberate, focused mind on just one thing, training my mind how to focus and giving it a space to, well, stop being flexed all the time, right? Just, you know what, loosen. And that is a wonderful way it's another form of meditation. I could call this an open eye type meditation. And I don't paint my nails daily, but about every third or fourth day, that's one of the things I kind of habit stack with the meditation.
Yes. And I love it because I like, as a mindfulness coach, I'm always finding what are things like something like that, finding ways to sort of hack your day, but practically, like a practical way to do it.
For me, it's so fun. It like ties with my inner child that likes glitter or colorings.
Yes.
One of the ones I like too is eating.
Yes.
So part of the health journey for me was being on a very strict diet to heal the gut. And now I can eat anything I want. And so all these textures and flavors I missed out on, even the coffee was not part of my life for a while.
Oh, okay.
So delicate. They're delicacies to me. And really enjoying the food or washing dishes, like the suds and the smoothness. And I think this ties into, I believe it's Dale Carnegie that talks about when we're doing our daily work, to relax. We tend to be kind of tense, and our eyes are tense, even our eyeballs are tense, you know? And so when we can cut a lasagna to serve to our family without tension, or, you know, saute the eggs without tension, it's like teaching the body again to not be tense through the focus of being in our body and in the moment.
We're so split, you know, our mind's always going a million miles a minute, and there's so many options all the time and a lot of decisions that have to be made, and we're just like, so
we're scattered, and
right.
that energetically is exhausting. You know, emotionally it's exhausting, mentally it's exhausting. When we can be where we're at, eating dinner with the family, communicating, paying attention to what people are saying and not saying, and just being present without judgment and loving them for who they are and all they have potential to be. So that's kind of the way that I see mindfulness as a practice, not just a meditation, but all the things in the day.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's something that you can do throughout the day. It's not like, oh, I have to take time out for 20 minutes and practice mindfulness.
It's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. And that's what I would like to say about the way we think. It's a life skill that becomes our lifestyle.
That's another really great quote. One of the things earlier you talked about, and you've mentioned it a few times, and I just want to throw it out there, is this: you become very self-aware of what your body is saying to you, all the felt senses and things like that, and you realize they're a barometer. And I can really appreciate how much work you've put into that, where now it really is like your second nature, because you understand that intelligence inside of you is speaking to you, and you're now, because you're becoming a better friend to yourself, and starting to listen. And so we can all, you know, get better at that. You mentioned earlier purpose, because your power sort of ties into purpose. We talked about passion. I mean, you've already done such a beautiful job of explaining sort of what life looks like when you make this a lifestyle, and even just your energy coming through the screen, when you breathe and when you talk, and you just say like,
and I get excited like you, Janie. I'll get really happy when I'm with people. It's like, oh, this is so exciting. And they're like, and sometimes I'm like, well, you're a little quirky, but it's a lot of us also, one thing what we tend to hold back isn't just the pain, but the joy.
I know, you're right.
And also for us adults, it's also coming back to our own voice, right?
True.
And our own joy. Yeah. Oh, I don't know how much time we have left, but I do want to talk about purpose a little bit here. So how the passion comes a bit from my purpose, and I'll be honest, I didn't find purpose until I found this light bulb went on in my head. Like, wait a minute, I can pay attention to my thoughts. Why didn't anybody tell me this? I was in my mid-30s.
Yeah.
And it was something I could not stop reading about. And I started studying and taking online courses and really applying. And so then I knew I was onto something. I said, I don't know what it is, but something about this is going to be what I do with my life. Prior to that, I didn't have anything to help me know about purpose. And I'd read a lot of books about, or little things. I was a self-help book junkie, but they didn't really kind of hit the nail on the head. I didn't know what self-help books to really read. I hadn't found that niche of interest yet on what makes purpose for me powerful. And I felt also disappointed in myself that being a wife and a mom wasn't enough. And so that part of me was a hole. And recently, I believe was reading, I don't remember the author, maybe we can do that in the show notes later. I think it was Jonathan Fields, and he said something along the lines of purpose was that if you don't know what it is, start living in its essence of what it might be. And then we're taking action so that now the opportunities can start coming into our world. And as opportunity shows up, the essence of that purpose will start to become a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And a way to kind of see this as an application that's practical would be, I want to be by the water, and I don't live by the water. And I specifically want to live by the ocean. And I'm in San Antonio, so that's not happening. One time we went to the ocean, an oceanfront for our annual vacation to the beach, anchored in my values, right? We went to this beautiful beach house, and it had an ocean view, and it had these beautiful like plastic chairs. They weren't anything special. And we had this little fire pit, and it was like, I was like, I want this when I'm at home. So I couldn't bring the ocean, but I had no backyard retreat and just had this little postage stamp yard with flat grass. There's nothing going on, new home development, no trees. So I bought these bright colored plastic chairs for like $15 a piece. I bought a fire pit. I got a hummingbird feeder, and I put a lantana in a pot nearby. And I have the essence of what I had that day. And now when we sit outside, it's not just these chairs by a fire pit and this flat grass. It's anchored in something meaningful. And so when we can find an essence of something that inspires us, what do we find ourselves buying a lot? What do we see ourselves Googling a lot? What images do we put on Pinterest a lot? What types of books do I gravitate to? What do I love to talk about? Those are the things that can start really playing with curiosity of what is my purpose? What would bring me more joy in a way that adds value to the world, that comes back to me in a value. And when we add value to the world, the value that comes back to us can be our income, our networking, our new friends,
Health,
opportunities we wouldn't have had, our health. Yes, all of those things, all the fun and opportunity. And it's scary when we get started because it's not new. Anything unfamiliar for the brain is uncomfortable. So learning the thought patterns that can help us become familiar and comfortable with the uncomfortable so that we can be in expansion, but with ease. If we don't want to be a rubber band that stretches and bounces back and stretches and bounces back, we want to be more like a tree that grows in its space, that flows with the wind, that's deeply rooted for the storms. I like to call the roots our values. And then when we have deeply rooted values, the storms of life won't take us down.
That's beautiful. I don't know if there's one more thing you want to add, but I know for sure I want you to let them know how they can connect with you on social media or your website before we say goodbye. And thank you again so much for
You're
spending time with
welcome.
us today.
One last thing would be just to recognize that you do have the power to create a fulfilled life. And that is a mantra for myself, for the mission state of my business and what I do with my clients. I absolutely believe in this as a universal truth. And to reach me, again, my name is Madi Shofner, and the website is madishofner.com. And we have, my handle is at Madi Shofner.
I'm looking forward to continuing to do some beautiful work here in our community together.
Yes, thank you too.
Blessings on all your endeavors.
As you.
And thank you to everyone who has tuned in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. Your likes, shares, and follows are greatly appreciated because they help spread the love. Be sure to tune in next week when we have Andrea Vocab Sanderson. She is a fabulous poet who is making waves here in San Antonio. She has a book and an album you are not going to want to miss what she has to say about power, passion, and purpose. See you guys next time. Till then, peace be in us.